Conversating? Conversating with Pops and Ade.
Yep, conversating with Pops and Ade.
Well, I'm Peter J. Harris.
And I'm Adenike A. Harris, and this is Conversating with Pops and Ade.
Conversating with Pops and Ade.
Let's go.
Let's get started.
Hey, hey, hey! What's up, Dad?
Episode 2.
Episode 2 underway. What's today's topic?
Well, let's see. Lessons earned and lessons learned. Somewhere there's a parenthesis.
It's around the E. It's around the E.
That's right. There you go. There you go. Because, you know, y'all campus people, y'all always be putting like the postmodern folks be putting like parentheses around words and letters and whatnot. So,
well, for the record, you did that. I didn't really understand it, so maybe I'm not a campus person in real life.
Yeah, but you're the one closest to a doctorate than I am.
True. Soon come.
Yeah. So I guess we need to say what it means, huh?
Yeah, so this episode, thank you, welcome back, season 2 of Conversating with Pops and Ade. This is episode 2, and as my grandfather used to say. I'm going to let Pops lead the way because when we began doing this work with one another, we kept talking and we were creating like our bio. Pop said some really profound things, as if you listen to season 1, he always does. Typically, they're made up words such as victorize, but with the love of victorize and the action of victorizing, we also discussed the lessons learned and earned, because through trauma, through this life experience and this terrible thing that happened to me, but also rippled in and reverberated through my family, we also have lessons that we've learned and lessons that we've earned. And I would like for my father to talk about why he coined this phrase as something that we as Pops and Ade have just grasped hold of, and it's about that's kind of our pedagogy. I got to throw the word in there anyway, but it's a part of our teaching tool. So go ahead, Pops. What do you mean by lessons learned and lessons earned?
So there's several dimensions. As you know, I like to approach things to a lot of different angles on the kaleidoscope. So
like
the easiest one. Don't start nothing. I'll start singing one of them old songs, you know.
Okay,
but I mean, the simplest dimension is simple. It's, are you healthy enough to look at your life and discern lessons from the experiences you've lived? Whether in our case we're talking about the ignition of a negative experience, but in general, are you able to be at a certain place in your life where you can look in, look out, ask your friends, you can look in your journals, look at your list of your series of photos in your phone, on your iPad or some tablet or whatever.
Or if you're analog in your photo book.
Oh, absolutely. And whatever tool you use, are you able to track lessons, to land on lessons? That's just in general. Basically, you look up at yourself in the mirror and you say, "What have I learned today? What did I learn last week? What did I learn from that experience?" The earned energy for me, that's part of that whole victorizing dimension. So if you earn something, that means you have actually put your spirit to the grindstone and you have said, I'm going to fully participate. And you end up sort of building muscle as a result, in my opinion. When you earn something, that means you have actually like confronted it or faced it or embraced it or Muhammad Ali with it. You know what I mean? So, the first level for me, and then I'm going to ask you, is if you say you've made progress in your life, if you say you have eyeballed your life with ethics, with courage, with imagination, can you my opinion, you should be, but can you identify the lessons you've learned?
Mm-hmm.
Can you track them? Can you check them off? Can you, even if you don't check them off in a line by line, can you feel the pulse of it? You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
The breath of that lesson.
Mm-hmm.
And then, as part of that sort of check-in, that analysis, can you measure how you earned it, the effort you put in to earn those lessons? So yeah, that's the way I like to start. How about yourself?
Wow. Coming after that, what does
Come
one
on, break
have
it
to
on down.
say? Man,
Break it
Pop,
on down. Break it on down.
I think you took a lot of the words from me. If I'm being really honest, that's you said something that stuck with me about being able to track, right? If you were
Mm-hmm.
bold enough to track the lessons, being able to
Mm-hmm.
look at yourself internally, externally, asking your friends, because I think the lessons learned is really about growth. Have you grown?
Okay. Okay.
Have you grown through something that you've experienced? So we all think about, a lot of people want to say that we grown, like, oh, I'm grown, I'm grown, I got this. But in reality, the way life pulses and moves, you should be constantly growing. And I'm going to use the word should, right? You
Okay.
should be growing because you're learning lessons every day, all the time. Every
Mm-hmm.
experience that you have, if you're doing the same thing over and over again, is because you're not learning the lesson. You're not. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, there's so many times that people in faith communities can say, if you repeat the same thing over again, it's because God is trying to get you to learn the lesson within that, right?
Mm-hmm.
You have, in psychology, when you're repeating patterns over and over again, it's because you haven't learned that behavior pattern. You haven't been
Mm-hmm.
able to use your coping mechanisms to move through that and to learn something else. Like, you haven't adjusted and grown through your that behavior that's not serving you. So for me, that's what lessons learned mean. Is like, what did I learn from what I experienced? What did I learn from my dad today? What did I learn from my trauma about myself, about how I interact with other people, how I interact with my dad, how I interact with my mom? And then the earned part is, it's that earning. Like, I went through this. I went through the
Mm-hmm.
mud and the yuck and the dirt, and I when if I'm doing the Spartan race, I'm up in the trenches. Like, I've earned it because I put in the work. And I think that is something that people don't realize. You learn lessons because you've put in the work, because that's how you earned the lesson, right? Like, you've earned it because you've put in the work
Mm-hmm.
to identify whatever pattern you may be repeating. You've put in the work to understand yourself. You've put in the work to sit still with yourself. I think,
Mm-hmm.
if nothing else, I will say one thing about 2020, especially with the stay-at-home orders and quarantining and having to be alone. It struck a lot of people. I would say,
Mm-hmm.
my
Mm-hmm.
God, I got to deal with me.
Right. Right.
I got
Right.
to look in the mirror to figure out, like, number one, if you're in the house alone, you're like, wow, do I even like being alone? Do I
Mm-hmm.
even like being by myself? I think the uptick in depression, uptick in needing mental health, I'm an advocate for it. I think everybody should go to some type of therapy. I think there's always
Mm-hmm.
a benefit of working with someone who is objective, who is not, they don't know your life. They only know what you're
Mm-hmm.
presenting to
Mm-hmm.
them. But if they are a good therapist, they can typically identify your cycles, right? Your the things I've mentioned before. So I think it's really about sitting with self, looking internally, looking at your external world. Like, do you have people that are supporting you and growing, right? Because again, it's about growth. It's about those next steps. Like, you want to earn to be better tomorrow than you were today. And today, I'm hoping
Mm-hmm.
that you were better than you were yesterday, that you've learned something from that. So that's what it means to me. That it's so much deeper than just saying, oh, I learned a lesson today. Like, I learned,
Right. Right. Mm-hmm.
it's a lot deeper. It's really about, I learned this about myself. I learned this about my circle of friends. And then also, there's power in reminding yourself that just because you've grown and other people have not grown and other people have not learned their lessons, that doesn't make you wrong. That doesn't make your growth and your earning of these new lessons in your life a bad thing. just because someone might be like, oh, you've changed. That's good. I think a lot of
Mm-hmm.
people have this resistance to change, and they try to demonize it and make it seem like, oh, you changed, you different, as if that's a bad thing. Now, of course, if you're different and it's hurtful to yourself and hurtful to other people, and it's not in a positive and empowering, space, that's not a good change that you want to have. But if you're
Mm-hmm.
changing
Mm-hmm.
for the
Mm-hmm.
better for yourself and you're leaving people
Right.
behind that are not learning lessons, right? You see the same people doing the same thing and you're like, I don't really want to kick it with you no more. Like, you're not growing. You're not learning lessons. We're doing the same thing we were doing
Mm-hmm.
10 minutes ago or 10 years ago. We still doing
Mm-hmm.
it now. I don't want to do that anymore. So that's
Mm-hmm.
my takeaway from loving lessons, because that's the other piece that I think that you and
Right.
I got to talk about, is the loving part. Because when
Yes.
you're loving on yourself, when you're loving on those around you,
Mm-hmm.
that is the
Mm-hmm.
undercurrent.
Mm-hmm.
That's the through line of all of this, is that they're loving lessons of self. You're earning loving lessons. You're earning
Yes.
this growth. You're earning this satisfaction and this happiness. So that is, to me, why when you coined it, I was like, he got it. But now saying it out loud is like, that's the deepness of it for me.
Yeah, well, you actually reminded me. I forgot that we said loving lessons
Mm-hmm.
learned and
Yep.
earned. So that's a hell of a reminder. I think what I also think is another dimension to this topic is ethical lessons
Yeah.
learned and earned. I mean, so I'm not sure I would use. In fact, I know I won't use the word growth myself. I tend to think in terms of like expansion for myself.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so there's a line of growth that, yesterday I was this way, today I'm here, maybe, or what have you. I like that concept that the jazz players I've read about, Charlie Parker and others, they call it the woodshed. And so that's how I looked at the quarantine. And I also love that term when I first heard it, shelter in place.
Yeah.
There was something kind of moving about that. But so for me, when I'm sheltering in place over this last year, I'm woodshedding. I never stopped reading. I never stopped.
Can you explain a little bit more about woodshedding?
Yeah. You just go. It's a period when you're not performing. It's a period when maybe you have hit your wall, and or you, in some cases, you get so successful so early. Somebody like a guy like Charles Lloyd in his youth, relative youth, he became like, he had a million selling couple of songs. He was a jazz player. That wasn't happening that much in them days, 70s. But, he basically put himself into his own woodshed. Apparently had enough
Mm.
money, bought a crib up on the central coast of California and went silent. And no doubt, though, was studying, was
Mhm.
listening, was detoxing, was whatever you have to do to really come into full,
Mm.
sharp focus with yourself. It's an expansiveness. Then, this particular artist, comes back on the scene in the '90s, blowing it away, and was a mature man, was a person who had really imbibed his lessons, his loving lessons. He calls himself in a lot of his stuff a tender warrior, and I'm
Mm.
so touched by that. So I just want to say that one of the other dimensions is this sense of being in, of learning ethical lessons, you know, and who the person is in your circles that you take the time with, if quote unquote they haven't been growing, or if you
Right.
see them repeating patterns that aren't the healthiest. If
Right.
they're your real people, you pull their coat. As
Right.
your uncle likes to say, he calls himself a coat puller, a coat tail puller. So you pull. Yeah, nobody has tails on their coats anymore, I'm sure. But so yeah, dimensions, always dimensions for me, because
Mm-hmm.
when you get stuck, you know what I mean, in a linear vibration,
Mm-hmm.
you there are times when you got to be linear. I mean, you set up for production schedules, or somebody calls you, you're supposed to call them back. You're on the clock, somebody's paying you.
Right.
But when the stuff we're talking about it's not so linear to me.
Yeah. I love that notion of like woodshedding. Like now that you've explained it even in more
Mm-hmm.
detail, it hits harder and more clear because you're right. It's the whole idea of cocooning. It's the
Yes,
whole
yes.
idea of going into self and really just like, okay, well, what can I do? So, and then your notion of like expansiveness, like that's amazing. Yes, for me it's growth. That's my word, and your word
Yeah,
is
no, it's cool.
expansion. But
I
that's
want to
really
grow too.
yeah, but
Mm-hmm.
I mean that's what growth is, right? It's just about the different
Yes,
direction,
yes.
right? So you're either growing internally and then expanding your heart, right? Or you're expanding your space, what you're taking up, how you're taking
Mm-hmm.
it up, or you're growing, like you're growing tall, you're still, but
Mm-hmm.
either way, it's about space. It's about taking up space.
Yes.
And I think the key words are ethical, lovingly, right?
Mm-hmm.
Positively, with grace. Like you're not bulldozing over someone else. You're not necessarily expanding into someone else's space and trying to make them like you, but you are
Yes.
recognizing that you're not apologizing for the space that you're getting ready to take up. And that's the thing. And then if we're talking about
Mm-hmm.
pulling coattails, yeah, if they're your real friends and you
Mm-hmm.
should be able to absolutely say, hey man, what's going on? What this isn't who I
Mm-hmm.
know you to be or who you can be.
That's
We
right.
started here together and then now, we talked about wanting to get to this level. Well, I'm moving towards that level, but you're not coming with me. Is this still your goal? Is this still what you want? It doesn't make me love you any less, or and if
Mm-hmm.
you come with me doesn't make you love you anymore. It just makes me recognize, well, this is where I'm going. I'm expanding, I'm growing to this,
Mm-hmm.
and I can
Mm-hmm.
come back down here with you and kick it if this is where you want to be. But understand,
Right.
I have been woodshedding, which I now love even more so. I've been woodshedding, I've been doing my work, I've been digging in, and I'm moving forward. So you coming or not? Some friends who ain't ready might resist.
Mm-hmm.
Some
Mm-hmm.
friends who and those are typically the friends that are like, man, you changing, you think you better than them.
Right. Right.
They resist that because you are pulling their
Mm-hmm.
coattails. You are basically
Yeah.
holding a mirror up to them, like, look at yourself. You like this or
Yeah.
not? Like, if you don't like what you see, then let's move together.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Another thought that hit me as another dimension is if you approach people ethically and you say to them the kinds of stuff you just described, you're not trying to manipulate them. You're trying to be a part of their, um, you know, personal transformation, however they want to describe that.
mm-hmm.
It's the complete opposite of being a predator, of being a predatory person,
Mm-hmm.
because those persons want to control everything. And of course, when the hierarchies kick in, you know, which, and those ugly hierarchies or super unethical hierarchies, kick in, a person is trying to run your stuff, your
Yeah.
body, your space, your time, your circle of friendships. So I think when we target loving lessons learned, loving lessons earned,
Mm-hmm.
we're making a stance. That's a political stance. It's an ideological stance.
Mm-hmm.
It's a real moral stance, and it's not false innocence, or it's not. We really are not about the other kind of change, the other
Yeah.
kind of lessons. And frankly, in third, maybe in a fifth dimension, you
I think
know,
we had 7 dimensions by now, though, because
well,
every
it's
time
cool.
we keep going.
What? That's what my hands got to start. Like
We in the 7th
your boy
dimension.
Tony. Tony be saying, yeah, when the dudes be talking with their hands, Tony Baker be like, yes, I believe. The other thing is, you just want to make sure that the laser is on positive control, which is usually yourself, you know, inspirational control, of how you speak to someone, how you act towards someone,
Yeah.
ethical, control, where you are really, really, you can maybe even feel yourself. I don't know how much time we got. I got to tell you this quick story. So maybe the last time I went to the barbershop, I met this was a new barber. He had all these beautiful posters of Malcolm and other people on the wall, and I was just being respectful. I said, "Oh man, these are beautiful." And somehow he got to talking about manhood and masculinity, and and then he said something to the effect that you know how they be doing, they be wanting to make you gay, you know what I'm saying, make you homeless. And I'm right there in the chair with my thing on, and I said, "Oh no, not that!" Right in my ear, not some homophobic crappity crap. But you know what hit me? It just hit me in the middle of that moment. I said, "You know what, though, bro?" I said, "Now, bro, I'm the wrong dude to say that to." I said, because if you don't, I said, if you, and we're right there. This dude's like, you know what I mean? Luckily, I don't really care how my hair look once I go to the barbershop. But I did. I said to him, I said, well, bro, that's very ahistorical of you, man, for a dude who say he love history. I said, because if you gonna say you ain't into being gay, fine, that's not your orientation. But if there's no gay community members, there's no James Baldwin. There's no March on Washington, because Bayard Rustin was the coordinator of that. Bayard, maybe I think it's pronounced Bayard Rustin. I mean, and on and on. I just kind of ran down a quick thing, staying ethical, not letting the discomfort of the moment, allow me to be sort of, buffaloed. Because it would have been, frankly, pretty easy to say, yeah, man, I understand, or whatever.
Yeah,
but
I
can't live like that. I can't live like that no more. I'm not asking for no, applause or butt tapping, like, just what up, man, way to go, man. It just is an example of when you're right there at that little pivot point, and you got to say, well, I done learned too many lessons. You know what I mean? I've earned too many lessons. I can't let this slide, bro.
Yeah. And you lovingly corrected him in a sense, right? You lovingly taught him a new lesson.
Yeah.
Like, this may be what you think, but you're not going to do that to me. You're not going to put what you think on me just because I'm in your chair and you think I got to listen to what you have to say. So you lovingly taught him a lesson of, this ain't going to work for me. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's wrong. I told him it was wrong. I said, bro, you can't have Muhammad Ali, Malcolm, King, all these people on the wall and say you about the culture and its history, and then you just gonna shave off bloods who just because their orientation is different from yours.
Right.
You know what I mean? You're gonna shave them out of history. You know what I mean? I like that kind of shaving vibe.
Well,
I know I need a haircut. Somewhere in our episodes, I'm gonna show up and you're gonna say, "Hey, where your hair at, Mike?"
Yeah, me too. I might get some. I might change up my hair into some of these episodes. So, well, thank you, Dad. As always, it's a pleasure to learn from you. Like again,
and
you
learn
always
from you.
teaching loving lessons, and I earn them, and I learn them, and I love them.
Yeah, and we both learn them together. That's right. That's right. Well, cool. Yep. Onwards to number 3. When it's time, let's go. Let's keep on conversating.
Absolutely. Thanks, everybody. And we'll come back whenever we post the next.
That's right.
All right.
It'll be soon.
Have a great
one.
Soon. All right.
Bye-bye. You've been listening to Conversating with Pops and Ade. We're your hosts, Peter Harris.
And I'm Adenike Harris. Please, wherever you're listening to this podcast, subscribe, share with your friends, and give us feedback. Also, don't forget to follow us at our Instagram page at PopsnAde, PopsnAde. Facebook, we are Peter and Adenike Harris. And you can also find us on YouTube, where you can see other videos of work that we have done, including our TED Talk entitled Healing versus Retaliation. Thanks again, and come back soon.